Hello, Windward, and welcome to the Pencils Down podcast. In service of Windward's mission to remediate our students' language-based learning disabilities, we take every instructional moment seriously, and we work to be intentional in everything we do. This podcast is an opportunity for Jamie Williamson, our head of school, to have an informal series of unscripted conversations with different members of our community about who they are, what they care about, and what the Windward School means to them. So, we're putting our pencils down, we're closing up our computers, and we're looking forward to sharing another conversation.
I have to just lead off with saying I've been looking forward to this conversation. I know that you haven't. That's the elephant in the room. So, right,
true.
we're gonna start there.
Okay.
Is that I'm very excited, Anna, Dr. Anna Weiser, to sit down and spend a little time with you today. I totally understand the feeling is not mutual. And not because I don't think we enjoy having conversations. We have a lot of great conversations, and that I'd like to think, and maybe you can disagree with me and dispel this notion, that they're fun conversations and I enjoy, and I'd like to think that sometimes you enjoy conversations with me.
So mutual.
But not this one, because this is not a space that I think you find some comfort in. And I can appreciate that. I really truly honor and appreciate that. And I know that you would love to run out of here today before we get this done. But I know that you're not going to, because I think it's so important for our community to understand the great work that you're doing, who you are as a professional, and the great heart that you bring to this work. Because I think all those things are real and true. And I just want to make sure that we get a chance to share your incredible story and the work that you do here with our community. So I hope you can forgive me for making you be a guest on this podcast, right?
Thank you for having me on your podcast.
I'm so glad to have you here. As we get started, one of the first things I've been trying to do as a thread we've pulled through all of these, I just love having a chance to kind of share a little gratitude with people as I'm bringing them in, right? So this is kind of the full frontal assault of gratitude, which I'd like to think is sweet and endearing, but we all take things in different ways. You have been here for a couple years now, and we have absolutely enjoyed having you here. I think the things that you've brought to the table here, one is that you'd be hard pressed to find somebody who's not more student centric than you are. No matter what's happening in the world, it's all about what's right for the kids, what's right for this course of treatment or plan for this child. And I think you truly keep that at the center of all that. You are also such an incredible caretaker of others. I think that's one of the things that I noticed about you, out of the gate, and has sort of continued to be true. It's rare that for those of you who happen to have met Anna and see her out and about on our campus, often she's carrying between 1 and 3 bags filled with things that she can give you if you need something. Snacks, utensils, office supplies. It's like a magical, it's like the room of requirement, but in a bag. You pull out whatever it is you need from the bag, and you're able to kind of help others along your journey. And, and alluding to the intro of the conversation about you, finding some discomfort in being in this space, is really, I think, a testament to the great humility that you bring. And your work has never been about you. It's not about you. It's really about everybody else and the kids you serve. And I have just a tremendous amount of respect and adoration for that. So thank you for everything that you've done since you've walked in our door. Our program is better because you're here, and our community is better and stronger because you're here. And I'm really excited to have the conversation today.
Thank you, Jamie. It's such a gift to sit with you and to try to stay open to receive your love and kindness and gratitude for me. And that is a unique gift of yours, to be able to really find that just right thing to reflect to someone that can make them feel really warm and belonging and special. And so thank you for that.
Means a lot.
Received.
Means a lot. As a clinical psychologist, you could do work in lots of different places. And I know we talked about in prep for this, I think as a human being, you are deeply connected to 3 little ones that you've had a chance to raise, a beautiful little family. And I know you took some time off between, doing some clinical work, being mom in charge of so many things, and then coming back into the space here at Windward. I have, given your skill set, given your talent, I feel like you could do work just about anywhere, right? There's so many great places you could find yourself doing incredible work. Why Windward?
Yeah, it's such a good question, because there's no shortage of places where I could go to be employed now with the state of things in our country. And, typically I'm a person who loves questions. And so I usually am internally asking myself at all moments some version of this question, which is, how can I most align myself with being of service in this moment? And I would love to tell you that that's the question that I was asking myself when I came to Windward, but that would not be the case.
I could appreciate that.
My Windward story really starts with a funny, serendipitous, fated misunderstanding that brought me here. Our associate head of school, John Rosenshine, is an important, and you know this, long-term friend of mine for about 25 years. And I had seen the job posting for the associate head of school for academic programs online. So I called John, a social call, and I said, "You're leaving Windward? Where are you going? You don't tell me what's going on." And he says, "Anna, calm down. First of all, I'm going nowhere. I am not leaving Windward. Also, that's not my job. That is a new job that we created, which is now the role that Lisa Murray is in." But he said, "Why are you looking at jobs?"
I was about to ask the same question.
Right. So he was already on to me and then quickly said, "I have a job for you." And I just as quickly said, "I am not interested." And we went back and forth a little bit. And to your point, I have 3 little kids. My husband is a physician. Like everyone in this phase of life, things were busy and I was not looking to add more things. And I just thought automatic no. I didn't even know what the job was, but I didn't want it.
It was a hard no.
Yeah, it was a hard no. And John, I know John really well. I have a lot of trust in him. He gets me. And he said, "Anna, trust me on this. You will love this place." So I thought, okay, I will interview. And so I came to interview, or actually I interviewed over Zoom. And there was this immediacy of understanding what it felt like to be with this group of humans who are really living our mission. I could feel the playful camaraderie of the teams. I could feel the love between people. I could feel everyone's dedication to our students. And so my immediate no really quickly became, automatic yes. And I think that sometimes in life, you think you might be going in a certain direction and the universe or life unfolds a path that might not have been what you expected, but you just have this feeling of, oh, this is exactly what I'm supposed to be doing. That's how I got to Windward.
There's so many paths, and I respect when someone's path is so linear and straight. I love this thing. I get a job doing said thing, and I spend the next, 30, 40 years doing that thing. I love that. A lot of respect. Not my experience, right? I tend to be more in the serendipitous kind of kismet sort of space where my path somehow has always kind of seemed to find me. And so I hope you know that I feel like your path found you here. So we're grateful that you didn't say no to John. We're grateful that you didn't hang up the phone after our interview together and say, "Oh my gosh, I can't do this." Because I do think, as you described, and there's another thing I'm going to come back to on gratitude, because I think it's also one of your gifts, is the incredible empathy and sort of EQ that you bring into a conversation. You have such a good social read and you kind of see connections pretty quickly. And so you just sort of echoed that a little bit in your sort of assessment of the team and where we were as a community. So really appreciate that.
It's a magical place here. And when we are all really aligned with each other and the work that we're doing and the children that we are serving, I am the kind of person who gets in my car. I drive to work every day and I'm excited to come here. And that is a gift that is not lost on me.
Well, we've been really glad to have you, and especially in this kind of this new role that we created here, which is the Director of Social Emotional Learning and Student Support. So you've got quite a mouthful of a title there. Helping, our guidance staff really think about, treatment plans and how we're working with kids and the group work we're doing and how we support our kids, to also helping advise the academic team at times when it comes to the larger social emotional kind of concerns and questions that we have. Because as you alluded to earlier, we are in the midst of one of the biggest mental health crises of our lifetime, and I hope it is of our lifetime, the biggest one that we've ever have to deal with. But we see more kids with anxiety, with depression, with kind of self-harm behaviors, and a lot of self-esteem challenges. And I think right now, especially at Windward, we have some big things that we're working on. I would love to have you allude to in just a little bit. But on our way there, I think it would be really important to kind of maybe do a little bit of a value check, right? As a leader, I think one of the things that I've always tried to do is show up in a very sort of value-centered kind of space with a lot of clarity about what my values are and the values that I'm operating from. Because whether we know them or not, right, our behaviors say something to the world, right? How we operate, how we show up, how we think about our work. And I think the more we can understand about our own sort of kind of values in there, I think some things become really clear, right? And this has been a reoccurring theme on the podcast, is that, like one of my big values is this concept of growth. Like I try, and I've actually been reflecting on this because there's moments where that's been a healthy value for me. And there's moments where I'm thinking about like, do I just need to like say this is good enough, and is that okay? But the idea of trying to be a little bit better in service of my community every single day has always been really important to me. And so as you think about your core values and who you are as a professional, as a mom, as a person, have you ever given any thought to like what is your sort of like top one or two values that really kind of guides you in this work?
Can only two.
Yes, because I do think you could name 15. I'm sure.
I could. Yeah. There's like four. I'm gonna have to stick to two. We're gonna push it to two. Super disciplined. Yeah, I am. I try to, like you, operate in life as a incredibly values-driven person. I am almost to a fault, painfully aware of how I move through space and with humans and how I do my work, both with myself and with others. And so I'm pretty consistently trying to think about how do I want to show up in this space, in this moment, and am I doing that to the best of my ability? I think fundamentally, like if I could just choose one, my top, and I will do two because I will leave no values unsaid. The first one has got to be love. And I believe so much in love as a core value that I'm going to go all in and not even soften it to like compassion or care, and kindness and empathy and compassion and care. They're all part of love. But as a human being and as a clinical psychologist, I so value the notion that an unconditional loving presence is what really creates the fertile ground where the work of life can happen. Yeah. And I think that when we approach things from a place of love, that's where growth and support and self-knowledge can really build. And I also think that on a more personal level, I've really come to understand that love is not just something that you give or receive, but that love can be a state of being. And that if we can practice to operate out of that place, we can be more aware of our interconnectedness with all things and all people. And that is where I think, particularly related to the work I do as a psychologist, when you operate from that place, that is where I can really offer real presence to people. Thank you. Love.
So appreciate that.
Two, this will not surprise you or anyone who knows me even a little bit well, authenticity. It is painful for me if I feel that I need to show up in a way where I cannot bring a reasonably responsible level of my full self to life. I so value being able to show up as a full human being with all of my parts, and to hope that in doing that, because it's not always easy, right? That I might reflect possibility for others to start to feel more comfortable with doing the same thing. I think that one of the most powerful things about trying to lead in an authentic way and with authenticity is being willing to be vulnerable, and to expose that we all are creatures that endure suffering. And when we talk about what life has been like for us, or the edges of where we are suffering human beings, it helps us to feel more connected to each other, to know that we're less alone, to see the humanity in the other person. And that's another space where I think then trust and connection can grow. And that's where the transformational change can happen. So authenticity.
Love both of those so much. You know, I think that the idea of unconditional love is not something we talk about enough. You know, I think especially because many of us here who work with kids often have kids, right? Because we're drawn to this work for so many different reasons. But I think a core piece is that we believe kids deserve to be seen, heard, felt, and to be, you know, something in the world that is sort of celebrated, and they're little sort of beings, and their personalities and their just life should be ones that we kind of lift up and help them find their right path. But as a parent, you know, this idea of being a source of unconditional love and support for my kids has been a massive part of that journey. And I so appreciate that, because I think, you know, I think it's just really important to keep that at the core of what we do. So thank you for sharing that. And I would just echo your authenticity piece, because it is, you know, we have whole selves, and parts of us guide this work. Parts of us, you know, are all like, we carry so much, whether seen or unseen, right? And I think being in a space where you get to be as close to that fully seen self as possible is always a good thing. And we want that for our students. We want that for all of our humans that are for our entire community. And I think that all of us growing up had varying degrees of being seen for our whole selves, or given the gift of unconditionally loving presence. For me, I was one of those people where school was a really safe place that was kind of a little bit more free from some of the chaos that would be happening at home. And part of what I feel so called to offer is, you know, there were so many warm adults who were incredibly important to me in my education and being a little person in school. Being able to pay that forward with some degree of reciprocity, to be an unconditional loving presence for all of the humans that we serve here, is a real gift to me. I think we all see that in you. So thank you. You've been doing a lot of stuff since you've gotten here.
It's been busy.
You know, we spent some time. We've gotten feedback from families, from faculty at times. That, you know, we've been doing some really great work, and our team's been doing great work on the SEL front for a long time. But I think we arrived in a space where we've realized that we are a large 3-campus, you know, community. And we as a school have always kind of prided ourselves on program, and the idea of having a clearly defined program, and that program, whatever sort of sliver we're talking about, is delivered with a lot of fidelity and integrity and a lot of intention, and always comes back to being research based. And so as you have come into this, I think we felt there was some real opportunity, given the state of the world and where our kids were, where our families were, where our faculty was, and coming out of the pandemic, that it may be really good for us to think about adopting kind of a cohesive approach, right? From a philosophical on down to the practical, and kind of help us think about what does the research say, and how can we create some space. So you've been working on something, I think I call it big, right? That's not been rolled out to our kids just yet. But we've been focusing on the adults in the system first to kind of get some comfort with this. But I'd love it if you could talk about our work in pushing in Ruler into our community.
I would be so excited to. It's been a big project. First, I would love to take a moment to also shine a little light on the 9 school counselors.
That's great.
We have an incredible student support team. There are 9 of them. They work across our 4 divisions, and they're the heart and soul of the daily work of supporting all of our students and our faculty and our staff and families.
And kids love those folks. They're such good people.
Yeah. Their lines out the door to see them. Not because the acute need is so high always, but more because these folks are just beautiful touch points in so many of our students' days. And we have an incredible model here where we do not have our student support team and school counselors, locked away in the back of the hallway where people would feel shame or embarrassed to go see them. We are a department that is really woven into all aspects of what we do here. And to your point about our SEL approach and what we're bringing in, we really saw that there was an opportunity to level up what we are doing with our social emotional learning as it is applied to all layers and all levels of what we're doing in the school. Backing up, you and I both love, he's a clinical hero of mine, Dr. Stuart Ablon from Mass General. And he has this saying that I know touched both of us in a deep way, which is kids do well when they can. And the fundamental notion behind kids do well if they can is that we are sometimes making a mistake when we are assuming that a student or a human, for that matter, can't pivot what they're doing because it's just an issue of motivation. And that often it's really not about motivation. It's actually that we are missing the skills and the tools to be able to execute whatever change it is that we need to so that we can live a more fulfilled, peaceful, joyous life. And when we look at what is happening with our students and what might be useful for them in terms of social emotional learning, it seemed really practical and also relevant that what we should do is bring in an approach where it is totally focused on the daily work of helping everyone to build skills. So we identified an approach from the Yale Center for Emotional Intelligence called Ruler, which was developed by Yale and by Mark Brackett. At its most basic, there's so much information available about Ruler online, and we have an article in the Compass and one in the Beacon. So there are plenty of ways that folks can get more information about it. But at its most basic core, it's really a program that is aimed at helping all members of a community to develop and practice their skills of emotional intelligence. And the way that Ruler does that is by giving us 4 basic tools that we are spending this year learning together as a faculty and staff. A full year of training we're dedicating to that. And then we will start to teach our students these tools next year in September of 2025. And the approach for Ruler is really infusing these principles of social emotional learning, of how we can use these 4 tools to develop emotional intelligence into all aspects of daily life. So what we could expect to see, ideally a year from now, is that there might be students who are out at recess and there is some kind of a tricky social dilemma that is happening between them. And there's this common language now that we speak where there are tools and strategies that we can weave in that our students can use, where also our folks at home, their families will also know. So Ruler is a really, really beautiful intervention that can be woven through all parts of our community.
One of those tools, I don't want to get into all 4 because we could be here for 3 hours doing that, right? But I think the first tool we got to introduce was the concept of the mood meter, which I think has been really fascinating for so many reasons. So for those of you who don't quite know exactly what this is just yet, it's a grid and you kind of rank yourself on pleasantness and energy, right? How much energy am I bringing to a conversation, and how pleasant am I right now? And it's been really fascinating for myself, even like we do this at the beginning, the academic team, where we get to come into the meeting and say, take a moment of reflection and say, how am I feeling on this Tuesday at 10 o'clock, right? And with no judgment, right? If I have just come out of a meeting and I am super stressed, I get to own and say that and think about that and say low energy or sometimes high energy, very unpleasant. Because we all have ranges of our emotions. And then I love the follow-up question which is, the idea of like, am I happy staying here? And if I'm not happy staying here, do I know what to do to kind of shift my mood in that way? Because, in my work with kids over the years, I think one of the hardest things is always the first step, which is recognizing where you at on any given thing, right? If you tell me I'm out of my seat 100 times in a classroom, but I don't think I'm out of my seat, I don't see it, it's hard for me to change that behavior. So it's that recognition and that understanding about that tool and how we're using that to kind of, one, gain a little bit of self-awareness at its core. And because I think once you're self-aware, then you can start to maybe make some really intentional shifts to be able to address that. I'm so glad you mentioned the Stuart Avalon conversation, because when I listened to the podcast he was on recently, it was one of those that just struck me so hard from my graduate school days, which I'm sure you had a lot of these moments too, where this idea, especially in the school psychology, the idea of showing up with the posture of, is this a skills deficit or is this a motivation deficit? And got to be honest, in the vast majority of work, it was the former and never the latter. It's almost always a skills challenge, right? And so the idea of really digging in on that changes your perspective for how you show up and sort of function with kids. I think it changes your perception around sometimes adults who may not have the social skills or the communication skills to verbalize something that they're feeling, or the tools to be able to shift a mood in a space. So I'm excited about what this is going to do. I think this is big work. It's research aligned, and I think it's, I think it's just really important for our community.
I also, in hearing you, a thing that feels really important to mention is we're a mission-driven school. Yeah. And our first priority is to remediate our students' language-based learning disabilities.
100%.
Period. And someone might be thinking, so you're spending all of this time on some big initiative with something about social emotional learning. Like, what? Can you help me understand how that's connected to what I have my child at Windward for? And the answer is really neuroscience, which is that what we know is that the brain learns best when the body and the brain are at a relaxed state of attention. And it is really incumbent upon us to make sure that we are putting everything that we possibly can in place to support all of our students so that we can increase their availability for learning at any given moment. And so when I am wondering, okay, I just want to really tighten up the connection between our ruler approach and what we're doing here with our students, it's so easy to then go back to the why, which is our job is to, especially in the student support department, is to really provide all of those ancillary layers of support that's like the fundamental nutrition to help our students be able to really do the work that they are here to do. I like to think of it like a marathon athlete, and you can't go get coached to learn how to move your body to run if you're not first feeding yourself with a really nutritious diet plan, food plan. And so I think that the SEL comes as a really basic need to help all of us to stay available for teaching and for learning. And I am thrilled, like you are, that Ruler is an approach that will help us to not just motivate kids, but to really fill in some of those skill gaps together, where another beautiful thing is our students will see our adults practicing the very same things. And that is a really important thing for our kids to see, which is this is how all of us can move through this community together.
Yeah, no, totally agree. And I love the framework and the analogy of the fundamental nutrition. I think that's a really good sort of baseline. Because I do think as we have we get our bodies and our brains into a relaxed healthy state that helps us access all that we have and do the best work, which leads me to my next question. So that's a nice, great segue.
What's it going to be?
Because, this work is hard. And as we're interviewing folks, we're talking about some of the work. I think one of the things that I tend to say ad nauseum is that this work will always be hard, right? Because our kids deserve us to show up every single day and bring our best to the work. So this work is not going to be easy by design. We have complex learning profiles. The work we're doing, teaching kids how to read is a little bit more like rocket science than people want to believe. And we leverage good research through the work, and you have to put the work in here to have that outcome for kids, which is what drew me to this place a long time, 6 years ago. And I'm still every day just deeply in awe of the dedication, the discipline, the high level of functioning here. But with that said, work's hard, right? And the flip side of that is, and I know this is something that I am like on a journey with right now, because I spend a few hours a week in service of Windward.
Just a few?
Just a few, yeah. Some days I have like what I feel like is a full work week for most folks by like Tuesday at like 3:00. And so, you have to really think about, how am I taking care of myself? The old proverbial, like putting on your own oxygen mask sometimes, right? And for those of us in the helping profession, or who are drawn to like being in service of someone else or others at times, it's really easy. So I'm not calling you out, I'm calling myself out here, but I know that we're at times kindred spirits in this way. Is that like, we got to remember that we are people who need to also like take care of ourselves and think about the self-care rituals that we bring. For me, whether I think it's a good thing, but like the bike has always been something that, like, tough week, no matter what's going on, I can hop on the bike and wring out every bit of that, right? I kind of go to that flow state in that on the bike. I go to that blank space. It's almost like a meditation for me, but that helps me show up to be my absolute best self. And I would imagine there are some things that you do that would, I hope, allow you to like take care of yourself a little bit in this journey. Because when you're working with kids and you're managing some complex conversations, it's easy to take some of those things home in your mind and perseverate on them. Maybe I'm speaking again for myself.
No, I did, but I got you. This tracks.
So how do you, as a professional, as a mom, as a human being, kind of engage in a little bit of self-care?
This is a question that has a really different answer today than I would have given you about a year ago.
Okay.
Our work is really challenging. I will be the first to say it keeps me up at night.
Yep.
And sometimes that's for really good reason. These are, for the work that we do, these are human beings. These are lives that are at stake. I care deeply about the people that I am serving. And so that tightrope walk of when can I let this turn off is a really important conversation for me to have with myself. And starting this summer, I started to give myself a gift of a new activity that I do in kind of a little bit of a wacky way. I think that, I said earlier, I love questions. And one of the questions that I like to ask myself is, okay, how can I meet this moment with as much clarity and equanimity as possible? And one of the ways that I have found that I can do that is through painting with acrylics. I'm not an artist. I do not have a space to do this. I'm painting on my kitchen table using like dishes from my house to and I have this like really intricate system where I go to Home Goods, or like one of those stores, and I buy paintings that are already painted, like with weird stuff on them, or things where whatever's on clearance, like, some fruit bowl where I don't need to like what's on there. And I collect them. In fact, it works out better if what's on there is something that's not aesthetically pleasing to me. So I collect all of these canvases. I store them in my garage. And at any moment when I'm looking for a meditative, like you with the bike, painting for me is deeply meditative. It's a place where I can really ask myself to practice being present to flow and whatever it is that needs to be in that moment. Not overthinking, which for me is a practice I'm constantly trying to puppy train my mind. And so I take these canvases with a fruit bowl or some lady at the beach or whatever it is, and I totally paint over what's there, and I deconstruct it and make it into something else. And I've gotten kind of more involved in bringing in other elements over time. Like now I'm using Mod Podge and taking newspaper and tissue paper. And for me, it's not about the painting or the product. It's really the process. And it's a place where I am, as an adult, thinking like, oh my gosh, this is what it feels like to just be. And so if I am my instrument for the work that I do, I'm all I've got. I need to make sure that I am taking the time to approach my work with as much clarity and calm presence and unconditionally loving presence as possible. Taking time to paint. Sometimes it's like 7 things in a week, and sometimes I'll skip a week. Has become a really important, fun ritual for me.
So I love everything about that. This idea of upcycling some art.
Oh, that's a good way to say it.
You know, taking something that may have not had a lot of like intrinsic value sitting on the shelf at Home Goods.
Right.
No offense to Home Goods.
Sure.
But turning into something beautiful. And I'm going to challenge, I hate to sort of challenge you on your self-care sort of talk here.
Okay.
But by saying you're not an artist, I'm going to
I
take
knew
some.
you. I
I'm
had
going to
a
take
feeling you were going to say
some
this.
issue with that, because I think there's only one person in this entire world who can decide whether or not you are an artist, and that is you. And I think that I'm giving you full permission to kind of label yourself, because it's a creative practice, it's a creative pursuit. You're creating, you're putting beauty into the world. You're thinking about yourself in the process of that. So I'm going to give you the. I'm gonna dub thee an artist, if you don't mind.
Thank you.
So yeah. First off, I just want to say how much I have absolutely enjoyed the conversation today, as always. I really appreciate how thoughtful you are in your work, how you show up, how you try to be so wholeheartedly your authentic self and help others in that space to do that. I really appreciate how you have done such a great job of pulling together those incredible 9 people who help serve on the front lines of because you've got a really great team who deeply care about kids as well. And so in this work, is like I said, it's not easy to do this work, but I think that you have done a great job of bringing those folks together and helping support our kids and families in such a wonderful way. So thank you for everything you've done for Windward, for our kids. And thank you for being such a great colleague here. It just really means a lot to have you in our community. Thank you.
I'm so grateful. And I want to add, I can do the work that you're probably trying to close it up. So now you're going to have to reclose it.
Let's reclose it.
It's a thing I do.
Yeah.
But I can only do the work I do here because of the steadfast and unconditional support that I have from you and from leadership. And how I can practice my values and make sure that our team can do that too comes right from you. And I am deeply grateful for the ethos that is woven into the magic that's happening here at Windward. And that is something that in your tireless week of work that happens by Tuesday at 3 p.m., you're making that magic happen for the rest of us. I think fundamentally you and I agree on the data point of we are only as effective as the relationships that we have with others. Like that's data straight from also how therapy works and therapeutic relationship and helping relationships. And I love what I do because I love the community and I love the people I work with. But I think what is so special about this place is that it is based on your leadership, a relationally forward community. And that is really satisfying as a person who is very growth oriented and always looking to connect with other people, and make sure that we're all moving together and aware of how we all interact with each other. So having, I think our shared common career also is there. So I appreciate what you bring to your work because it is what allows me to bring myself to my work. So thank you.
Deeply appreciated and right back at you. So thank you so much.
Okay. Now you can reclose it.
Yeah. And I really hope folks enjoyed the conversation today. And and I look forward to continuing to work on Ruler, and thank you for being willing to sit down and have the conversation today. It means a lot.
Mostly willing. Thanks, Jamie. Thank you.